Hello. Hey, how you doing? So we're going to be looking at the 1970s In Search of Darkness film that's going to come up that they're making, that they're planning. They're in the planning stages, and they're asking us, the fans of the other films and the fans of horror, to do this, which is really strange to get the email with the press release and the synopsis, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. It's really strange to get that because I had mentioned something about 70s or going back and looking at the 70s when they did the 90s one. And I was like, oh man, that's my wheelhouse. Now, those people who watch my channel know I love 70s films in general, all the confession films, all the silly ones, but also I'm a massive fan of 70s horror. It's probably my absolute sweet spot for horror. I like the ones that are really stylistically 70s, whether it's Golden Vampires, whether it's, the AD 70, 73, whatever it is in that era. I just love the clothes, the style, the kind of relaxed attitudes that are kind of translated as funny. And plus, we've got a real golden era of certain types of horror film from there, whether it is the folk horror, whether it is the things like the Karnstein trilogy, whether it is the birth of slashers. We're going to talk about those, but I'm not going to make recommendations of just big blockbuster or popular films from the time that I know that they're going to cover. So hopefully it would be lovely, and this is arrogant of me, I don't know, but it's lovely to be asked to contribute and to like maybe say something about some of these films, because there's certain films here that I know I'm going to say that are not going to get mentioned, and I'm really, really keen to get these films into the documentary. So we're going to have a look. To start with, I am going to share with you the synopsis. Now, the reason I'm doing that is this in the email. The suggestion is to look at this first before you go into your survey, and obviously, it makes perfect sense. Because otherwise, you're just going to be like, "Oh, have you thought of this? Yes. Have you thought of this? Yes. We've done that. Yes." Now, I'm probably going to be a little bit controversial here and say that, for example, I feel like everything that could be said on, say, for example, Alien, everything that could be said has been said. So I'm going to try and skew it a little bit more niche and a little, but also fit to their sort of the structure that they're aiming for as well. So I'll go through that. What I've done is I've got my letterbox opened up to all my 70s films, and I'm going to because I want some saucy, silly ones in there as well. But I also, I'm very aware that I feel like everything that could be said on Jaws has been said. Everything that could be said on Alien has been said. I mean, blimey, the box set, the documentary, the Alien, and it, all the Aliens films have been covered so much. Possibly even The Exorcist. I've looked at all the BFI things about The Exorcist, but we've got things in there. We've got The Omen. You're going to have some tentpole ones in there to get people to watch the documentary. I guess you don't want to go too niche. I'm not sure about their audience, and maybe their audience will skew a bit older because of the 70s films. But then there's also, I'm not, when I was at university, people sat or went to the library back then, and the library was full of copied VHSs at the university. I won't say which one it is in case they get in trouble for copyright issues. But they get a copyright strike about 30 years later. But so but those films that were in there, I was watching films from before I was born, and bear in mind films like I Love Nosferatu, the original. I wasn't around then, as contrary to what you might think. So yeah, we're going to have a good look at these as well, and it's great to see people popping up in the chat. And even if you're watching this later, it would be awesome for you to just comment and make some suggestions as well. So yeah, let's dig into it. Hey, Ash's Antics, I see you in the chat there. It's good to see you. So Exorcist, Omen, Halloween. I feel Halloween. I feel we've covered Halloween into a lot, a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth. There's also a lot of talk about George Romero. There's some great documentaries about George Romero, Dawn of the Dead. I don't think we need someone. Again, like I said, there has to be ones that are tentpole, big names to get the big names to talk about them, but also to connect to an audience who might, not just want to go into some niche deep dive stuff and kind of stroke their beards about it like I'm likely to. So, for example, Jaws, Carrie, Texas Chainsaw, Amityville Horror, Phantasm is one. I think Phantasm is one that maybe, you know, has remained relatively indie. I'd love to see lots of detail on the Phantasm film, the original Phantasm. It's a great film. It's absolutely brilliant. More than I would like to see more talk about, say, Jaws, even though I'm a massive Jaws fan. Live by the Sea mainly because I love Jaws. And yeah, all the stuff outside my house are all like Amity Island signs and stuff like that. So yeah, I love Jaws. That's not what I'm saying. So we'll go through this a little bit more. Golden Age for horror. Yeah, The Underdog from Hammer, Twins of Evil. So we're talking Karnstein, and we're also talking folk horror and witchcraft. I don't know if they'll mention Witchfinder General. I want to double check the year of Witchfinder General, I'm pretty sure it's the 70s. But yeah, that's one, the sort of the puritanical side of horror, which is still very, very dark and quite hard. Oh, it's 1968 Witchfinder General. It doesn't squeeze in there, but you could have the more, and then it goes sexier. We go like kind of Witchfinder General, Burning Witches, and really kind of quite scary, violent, dark stuff. Then we go into the more sort of sexy stuff, Virgin Witch and things like that. So, hey, Double A, how you doing? Good to see you. So yeah, I'm going to go through this synopsis to start with. Then I'm going to show you their plans, and then we're going to go like the Death Star and find that little area where we can put our own. I'll do the survey with you live, so we'll do that survey together. So let's go back to the synopsis before I digress too far. So yeah, Twins of Evil would be a great one. Oh my word, that is a great film. Blackula, I'm not a massive fan of that. Not like. I mean, it's just one of those. I don't. It's a bit. It makes me a bit sleepy. Like a lot. Some of these films are like titles are great, and then the films are not. But and maybe that's a controversial thing to say, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I prefer the second one, but I can understand the importance and significance of the first one. Do we have to cover that one? Probably, to kind of its significance, a bit like we were saying about Dawn of the Dead and the change of zombies and the influence of that and over time all the way through to things like Walking Dead. I know, I agree with you. My dog just went, ugh. And the same goes with, you've got to set the scene and see how things, like, for example, Halloween, we could talk about the birth of the slasher, but if you're doing that, you're going to have to talk about Black Christmas as well, which I prefer. So that would be one that I'd mention, but I believe that's going to come up. Dawn of the Dead, the political side of it, but also it's just a silly, fun film as well. Not to forget The Exorcist, the one horror film that used to be like people would just go, "This is a masterpiece," and all of the horror films are not, and we're allowed to kind of rate this one. Jaws, even though Steven Spielberg said recently he's never made a horror film, which is quite interesting. And he was saying that the Weapons puts him off because he couldn't make something as good as Weapons. You could, Stephen, if you're watching, you definitely could. Like, Weapons is okay, but like you made Jaws, you could do this. Pep talk. The Omen, one of those films, it's okay. I like The Omen enough. Amityville Horror, the first one, sure, some good performances in that. Alien, obviously, it's Alien. Again, you'd have to maybe just have these as touch points, and some of them you wouldn't want to go into a certain amount of detail because you feel like you'd be covering a lot of ground that we've already covered. So we're talking about late 60s, your Easy Riders and Bonnie and Clyde moving into. Yeah, now I think the Vietnam era of films, or films when people got back from Vietnam and how that influenced filmmaking. For example, I Spit on Your Grave and things like that, about, dehumanization and how that changed horror. I do think that's an important part to cover, that maybe people don't quite understand why we ended up with like night train murders and let's think, like the house on the edge of the park and things like that. Because of It's all because of Vietnam and kind of seeing and doing and being involved horrific things, and kind of how people become dehumanized. So I think that and also, like, I guess the horrors of things like culturally, like the Manson family things. So yeah, going from that kind of freedom of Easy Rider and freedom of expression in terms of the content, the violence and the swearing and the love making. I'm not going to say that again. So yeah, Don't Look Now. You would talk about The Devils, definitely. Ken Russell, what a wild and wonderful career he had. Folk horror, I think. Now we've got, obviously, what you've got around this is there is a massive documentary, something like 12 hours of documentary about the folk horror genre that's relatively recent. So you don't want to just kind of gloss over it, but equally, that documentary from, I think it's 2021, Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched: A History of Folk Horror, is incredible, and all the stuff that came with it, really, really good. But I mean, it's one of my favorite types of film to watch. The Blood on Satan's Claw, wow, amazing. Cults and yeah, all that kind of stuff. Satanic Rites of Dracula, yeah, it's okay. But then we go, yeah, Argento. Suspiria, I would say, for me, is like the scariest film, that atmospherically scary film that I've ever seen. So yeah, if you're looking just for the needy ones, you've definitely got a lot of choice in the 70s, Gareth. Carry On Screaming is a good call as well, because it parodies and references a lot of the films that are around at the time, and that would be a really interesting one to discuss in the film. Not a bad call, actually. I quite like that. But yeah, Suspiria again. Is that too obvious? Will it be a tentpole one to talk about, or is it not as spoken about as much as we think? I don't know. It's hard to say sometimes. Let's have a look. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Shivers. That was on my list to mention. Shivers is I actually prefer Shivers more than Rabid and The Brood. I watched The Brood with a couple of people online. It seems like a long time ago. Gareth being one of them. So Cronenberg would be an interesting one. What I'd like to do is maybe group Cronenberg and some of the other Canadian creators like Bob Clark, and kind of show how that whole creative bunch, their ideas were kind of lifted and taken to the US, and sometimes kind of forgotten that they were there first doing some of these really creative things. Season of the Witch, okay, The Crazy Martin. Now, Martin is a 5-star film, but yeah, Martin, again, I think if you're going to talk Romero, it would be great to talk about Martin. Get John Amplas on there. He's such a great guy. I met him. He's really nice. That film, Martin, is maybe my second favorite George A. Romero film. Came out in 1977. Really different take on vampirism. Love it. Yes, let's have that. Wes Craven, Last House on the Hills of Eyes, hot new author Stephen King. Yeah, okay. I don't know if we need, again, might need to touch on them, but I don't know if we need to cover Carrie or even Salem's Lot into that massive, maybe Salem's Lot, but not Carrie in as much detail. I don't think. I'm kind of just guiding what I would do. The Living Dead in Manchester Morgue is one I love. Some of it's filmed in the Lake District, some of it's filmed in other parts of North. That would be a great one to dig into that I think a lot of people haven't. Let's see. You've still got The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, great film. The House That Dripped Blood. Yeah, well, maybe we could talk a bit more about Amicus than Hammer, and try and kind of or put them together and show what the differences are for like a new audience. That would be interesting. Let's see. The Sentinel, just in terms of casting and story, is wild. Get some Michael Winner stories in there as well. I Spit on Your Grave, I mentioned earlier. When a Stranger Calls, yeah, we're talking proto, who's on the phone slasher. Yeah, definitely. Dr. Phibes, yeah, okay. Right, I'm going to mention another one. Theatre of Blood that I think I would rather talk about. I think Theatre of Blood is a much more fun film than Dr. Phibes. I think it's just full of British TV stars and campness and silliness, and it's 1973, so it counts, and it's so much fun. It's such a great film, and it's people who watch it tend to like it. There's only one scene I don't like. Yeah, so man, Theatre of Blood I'm putting on there. I've not seen it mentioned yet. I prefer it to Dr. Phibes, both of them. Horror Express. Now, there's an interesting one for them to do there with Horror Express, linking that to The Thing. I think is really, would be a really good idea. Kind of showing, you've got 50s, 70s, and then you've got 80s, all from the same sort of source material, which is really interesting. I feel. Let's see. I'm not going to read every single one, but just ones that kind of stand out to talk about. So each year they're going to do it in potential topic chapters. All right, so setting the stage, of course, you got to do that. Let's have a look. Dog Day After, yeah, sort of showing how the leading, amazing films like Dog Day Afternoon, Taxi Driver, leading into a kind of a more tumultuous time, and kind of get through some real tricky events, particularly in the US, but just in the world. Cold War, all that kind of stuff. So that works. Yeah, that works for setting the stage. You've got to set the stage and kind of show the more horror elements of some of those films, like some of the more violent side of Taxi Driver or Dog Day Afternoon. Oh man, I need to rewatch Dog Day Afternoon. What a great film. And then, so this is where we go into horror folk horror, horror folk, people and horror, witchcraft. So what have we got? Rosemary's Baby in the 60s, Exorcist and The Omen. Maybe you could talk about those together again. Interesting to talk about the Church of Satan, the Satanic Bible, kind of. I think things like Ouija boards becoming, parties and things like that scares me to death. Cult stuff. So we've got Dunwich Horror. I know some people mentioned to me about that on Instagram when I was saying this. Twins of Evil, Daughters of Satan, Sentinel, Devils, The Car Death. Okay. So I might come up with a few more of those. There's definitely there's one that I know has not been mentioned that I think is one of the best films of the 1970s that covers witchcraft, cults, and is, I think, incredibly influential, if not deliberately, sort of accidentally. And there's two creators who I think probably won't get mentioned, who I want to talk about as well. So we'll get The Bed That Eats, Hex, Wicker Man. Of course, The Wicker Man. Now, The Wicker Man, I feel like, is one of those where there's so much talk about The Wicker Man. It might be difficult to come up with something interesting, or not interesting, but original about it. But it's so vital and important in the British film industry. I went and did a video where I went to all the filming locations, and it was incredible. And it just really made me feel part of that film. Oh, man, love it. I love it. It's a 5-star film, isn't it? Blood on Satan's Claw, that's a great film as well. Satan Witchcraft. You've got to put that in there and kind of get into the sort of sex and horror, or the use of sex and horror in the sense of films like I Spit on Your Grave, I think is like legitimately an incredible film. And I talked about it ad nauseum. I've got a video coming out soon about it. And I do think when you talk about films like I Spit on Your Grave, it's important to look at that as not an exploitation film and look at it as like a masterpiece of revenge. And it's really hard watch. It's not like you're sitting watching it in the same way as you might watch, you know, the Collinson sisters in something and just be like, oh, they're pretty. It's not about that. But it's really well made and it's a great story and it's shocking and it still shocks now. And it is that if we're grouping things, we're grouping into that talk of violence coming out of Vietnam, Joe D'Amato stuff for one example, but there's so many. Yeah, and that link with adult films being in the cinema as well. So I saw a really interesting picture the other day, and it was like something like Deep Throat or maybe Devil in Miss Jones or something. Oh, Miss Jones, and it was at the Prince of Wales Theatre in London, like and like on the sign outside, and I was just like, wow, you can imagine that now. So this is an interesting. It's just trying to make sure that when you're doing it, and I'm not no expert, I just love films, but I guess they're asking for us a suggestion, so here they are. Um, is that you want to maybe separate the sex and violence and exploitation elements and just be like, this was just for fun and like this is how far we can take it. And then some of these are making really serious points. It's just it's kind of hard to group them or kind of sometimes they're all just kind of lumped in together. So I think that's interesting, an interesting conversation to be had. And then okay, so the horror directors and auteurs of New Hollywood. Let's see what we got here. So yeah, I mean, these are people who there hasn't really been anything to touch this group of incredible creators. The Wes Craven and Toby Hooper and David Cronenberg and Romero and De Palma and all these guys, Argento for one, Fulci. But like not just making one great film, but making great film after great film after great film and becoming part of the establishment, really, being like low budget, passionate filmmakers using horror because to a certain degree it's cheap to make, but be doing it so creatively, working within those constraints to make masterpieces that people still dress up as and watch and read about and watch documentaries about. So yeah, that would be really important. I think the personality of these people is really good as well. I know we've all read at university Easy Rider, Raging Bulls, and watched the documentary, but like just to kind of see the differences in personalities getting things done. So for example, you might say Spielberg and Friedkin, very different. The Ridley Scott approach, but you've also got those people who did this on a budget, remained on a budget, tried some other things, came back to what they were doing, the Romeros of this world or Dan Coscarelli's. And then you've got people who just stayed in their wheelhouse and did some wild stuff like Fulci. And then you've got people who completely changed the form, like Argento completely changed the form. Wes Craven, just had this some of his films that he made earlier on, even he was a bit upset about them and wasn't as happy with them, and he's kind of changed his style, became and ended up making blockbuster films. Bonkers, really. And you've got Cronenberg, who's still dangerous to this day. His films are still shocking, confusing, challenging, and that's really hard to do when everyone's just like nothing, unshockable these days. So this is auteurs and personalities of those auteurs, in what they were doing in the 70s. Would we move into what they're like now? I don't know. Interesting. The slasher, so Black Christmas, thank God, is mentioned as well. Toolbox Murders. Let's see what else. Silent Night, Bloody Night is one of those that you see a lot because it's on public. It's in public domain. You can see that, and people get mixed up with Silent Night, Deadly Night. So that's one that might be interesting to talk about. Yeah, like maybe talking about how underappreciated Black Christmas is. as influential on slasher. I would say more so, or the same value as Halloween. I think that's worth mentioning. Um, yeah, again, Argento, um, really scary ones, that like shock you, like Driller Killer. Yeah, zombies. Okay, so this is where you try and get Simon Pegg for your documentary, or Edgar Wright or Nick Frost to talk about their love of zombies, because they talk about it so well. Because you can see that in Shaun of the Dead, the change of the change of the zombie film, the zombie genre, what they did, how they move. What they look like, the Tom Savini element. You get Tom Savini in there. Maybe he could talk about the evolution of the zombie, is really interesting. Then we could talk about the British side of things as well. The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, sometimes called Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. That's a great film, and it's more like, in a way, it's quite scary because it's widespread. It's got that 28 days later thing where you kind of you sort of widen the picture and realize that they're everywhere. They're wandering across fields. There's something scary about zombies walking across fields. And they perfected that with The Walking Dead. So zombie evolution would be really good. And then also, the difference of what an Italian zombie film is like to a US zombie film is very, very different. Yeah. Oh, wow. They've mentioned 28 Days Later there already. Read my mind. Let's see. Eco horror. Okay. So obviously Jaws spawning more insane versions. What I don't like, and what I hope somebody would mention here, is the ones where you saw actual cruelty. You saw absolute like animal cruelty to, and also how, well, there's really interesting documentaries already about Peter Benchley and how he kind of tried to undo the damage of the idea of Jaws. But also there's films where people were really hurting creatures and there's blood all in the water that's real, making these nature films. Now, some of them are really, really entertaining. That doesn't justify that. But some of them are really entertaining as they are, and they're not ones that I would watch. Jaws 2, right, great film, incredible film. Hey Larry, you're right. Yeah, Dawn of the Dead has to be on there culturally. It's one of those, isn't it? It's like how deep would you go into it? Maybe an overview of the evolution of zombies, and that, there's always the political element, and then once you're going to it becomes massive, and then it becomes a documentary about Dawn of the Dead, which there are some really great ones, aren't they? But yeah, it has to be in there. It's really tricky, isn't it? It must be hard making these documentaries. Jaws 2, I would love to talk about Jaws 2 all day long, because I just think it's a great film. I do really think it's a great film. Yeah, well, I'm going to quick scoot through those. There's some pretty terrible ones as well. I've got a big grizzly poster up on my wall. I'm not pretending it's a great film. None of these are necessarily great films, but it's worth talking about all the different creatures. I'd love to see like a supercut of all the, similarities between them and Jaws, and then a different creature popping up. Some of them are good. I'm trying to think of one that is good. But yeah, some of them are great, actually. So yeah, that would be worth talking about. But also the cruelty side of it really does worry me a bit with those films. Creature features. Oh, interesting. Okay, so they're going to talk about the developing Godzilla versus series. Interesting. That would be great. There's so many experts on those who can really open up a world of them, because it's a bit, I've always found them a bit scary to get into, because there's so many to choose from, so many different eras, so many different ones. And like people are like, no, that one's terrible. Oh, that one's great. And I've kind of jumped in and out of them. Obviously, there'll be loads of people into Godzilla now because of the amazing Minus Zero from last year, which I think has got a lot of people's minds racing again. So that would be good. And Gamera and all that. Ape! Yeah, Ape. Oh my word, yeah. Queen Kong. Queen Kong's an interesting one, because that's quite I don't think it's ever properly been released, or but you get Robin Asquith to talk about that, because it's one of these lost films that is actually I mean, I think he said he hates it, but it's really maybe the making of the film is more interesting than the actual film. Um, but Queen Kong, oh, you can watch it on Foursome. You can maybe buy okay, high concept comedy. It says, yeah, you could get Robin Asquith. Valerie Leon is she still with us? I'm sure I saw her at an event. Yeah, Rula Lenska. Yeah, you could get these people in. You could get you couldn't get the director. He's passed away. Um, but I know, yeah. But Queen Kong, got to talk about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was going to watch it, and because I love my Robin Asquith stuff, he's just amazing. So I do think I'd love to have Queen Kong discussed in a little bit of detail. He's a great interview as well. Give you all the behind the scenes stuff. In fact, in his autobiography, he does. So yeah, come on, folks from In Search of Darkness, get Robin Asquith on here to talk about Queen Kong. What else have we got? There's a British try. It's like, yeah, it could also, you could frame it a bit like the British trying to do something related, like a bit like Godzilla. The art, okay, the art, yeah, yeah. All right, so we've got poster art, Halloween poster. Trying to think of other ones, obviously Jaws, and then people using Jaws as a reason to kind of frame their films. Interesting. I imagine those Godzilla posters would be the more exciting and engaging ones to talk about. And then the icon spotlight. Okay, so now I feel like Savini's going to be in a lot. He's in some of the others, isn't he? And like he's just so all encompassing. But when you talk about Romero, you've got to talk about Savini in terms of what these things actually looked like. So yeah, we'll talk about the icons. So let's have a look. Does it say any specific names that they're going to do? Oh, Savini, D. Wallace. Yeah. Now, could we do a little bit, as much as I love John Carpenter, could we do Deborah Hill and her impact more than talk about John Carpenter? Because obviously we've got the whole thing set. He's great and he's good value and he's a great interview, but yeah, and maybe even like, yeah, I'd love to hear people talk about Deborah Hill, Nancy Allen, okay, Linnea Quigley. Yeah, let's get some. Yeah, yeah. But who would I like to see in there? Well, of course, Vincent Price would be a good one, but it's going to be difficult to get hold of him. You could get Britt Eklund to talk about The Wicker Man. She's doing the conventions in the UK at the moment. She's doing one with Talking Pictures TV. So it says, help us choose. Okay, well then I will. So let's have a quick look before we do that. We'll have a look at the press release before, just so I don't end up saying the same thing over and over again. Hey, Larry, I've already said hi to you, haven't I? And Double A and Gareth and everybody who's watching now or in the future. Weaver for or Ridley for Alien. This is the thing as well, though. Like, how deep do we need a documentary to go into Alien? When it's a bit like The Exorcist and for others, where it's just been talked about so much. Like what? But then again, you do want to kind of set these key moments because, for example, without Alien, you wouldn't have 27 million rip-offs of Alien that I love, of different types of creatures popping up in space, like not Spaceball style, but not deliberately Spaceball style. So yeah, that would be good. Things popping out of people's stomachs. So let's have a quick look at the press release. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, they've won loads of things. CreatorVC is great. I like them. I like their business model. I like the way they do the business. I like the way they connect with people, and I like the whole thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre again. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I feel I've heard people talk about that so much more than I've seen the film, like more than I've watched the film. But it would be nice. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? You want to try and dig things out of people where maybe they haven't spoke about them before. So you're looking for maybe a slightly different angle, maybe a political angle, maybe link it in with some of the other stuff I said earlier on about, like, I don't know, interesting. Or certain key scenes and the kind of bonkersness of the 70s. Or even just like, yeah. there'll be things that people have said that maybe other people haven't heard, so it will be the first time for them. So it's a tricky. It is tricky. Like I keep saying, it's tricky. Without wanting to sound like Run DMC, it is tricky. So they're really trying to get people involved in what they think. So writer, director, do we know? Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. Right. Nice. Yeah. Executive producer Robin Block. I can't wait to share my nostalgia. Yeah. Robin Block. Most significant evolution of the series we've undertaken so far. It is. It's a massive change because you are they're going to do a book with this, which sounds great. But I do think the tricky element of this is there will be just so many Fangoria fans who are just like 80s horror, like, and that's it. Maybe even now in 90s. We're starting to see more people talk about 90s films and the nostalgia. There's not going to be a lot of people with 70s nostalgia as such. But if you're born in the 80s, you probably watched a lot of the 70s. I always skewed that way. 70, 79. Yeah. I mean, I was only born at the end of it. So pre-orders in May. Okay. I'm going to try and get a link for this again. There's a few people took me up on my, which I'm really appreciative for. I really am appreciative. Who took me up on my link. And they got a good deal out of it, and I got like a little bit of money towards the channel. Don't worry, I'm not moving house or buying a yacht or anything, but man, it was nice just to think, oh, I can put that, my donation that I make to mine, my donation I make to the Christie, and also I can kind of just go, oh, people are watching the videos and they bought the Thing expanded sets, and I got a tiny amount of that. But also people are buying the Thing expanded set, which again, I'm only promoting things that I want to watch and enjoy myself. So yeah, that was pretty cool. It was very cool. So let's have our say. This is the bit now. So I've already gone through my other bits. I've read the synopsis. I've done all my homework. I've been a good boy. So let's have a look at making choices. Which bits are you most excited about? Select up to 3. Okay, so okay, so I'm not going to talk about posters as much. Horror icons depends who it is. Creature features, love. Eco horror, interested in, but there has been the recent documentary about all the different shark exploitation, which is a really good film. And the guy who makes that does the really good podcast about the films that didn't get made. I can't think, it's not called that, but yeah, something along those lines. I really like the podcast. Can't remember the name of it. Alters. Okay, I'm going to go Satanic Frenzy, Sex and Horror in the 70s, and I'm going to go, only because I'm interested in how they're going to do it, I'm going to go eco horror. I'm going to go eco horror as well. Now, I know that people who are watching this with me are going to scream at their device or whatever they're watching this on and say, you're not going to put zombie slashers, creature features on there. No, because I feel like I'm going to go for the ones that I'm personally most interested in, but also that maybe haven't been talked about before, like originality I'm going for here. So those are the 3. Up to 3. Does it up to 3? I can choose 3. Yeah. What are you least excited about? Okay. I'll be honest. Poster art. Not that there aren't great posters in the 70s, and I've not got my whole room covered in posters from the 70s and 80s. But I don't know. I feel like 80s and Drew Struzan and that kind of thing is more. And we've covered that. Am I that interested in setting the cultural stage? Yes and no. Yes and no. I'm going to go for that, and then because I'm only going to choose those 2 because all the others I'm really interested in, and even the cultural stuff needs to be there. Now, this is the big bit. What do I want to see most covered? Now, is this ones that are already on their list or things that I think? So this is where I'm going to really go into things that I've not seen mentioned that really need to be. And that is, hey, Mr. Dan and Horror. an absolute aficionado of horror. Here are my things that I think really important. There's that period of time where you've got Hammer's on its way out, Amicus is on its way out, British horror's declining, and then you've got these kind of outliers who kept going. And I don't know if they get mentioned enough. There are occasionally a few box sets come out, and you can talk about this in the influence on Alien as well, because he made Inseminoid. But I really want Norman J. Warren highlighted in this, and particularly for the film Satan's Slave, which I think for me is one of my top three 70s horrors. And you watch that and you watch Get Out, and I'm not saying that that's where Jordan Peele got the idea for, but there's so many similarities, and that won the Oscar. It's a great film, Satan's Slave, Norman J. Warren. So I'm going to put him down. I'm also going to mention as well, I'm going to mention Pete Walker's films, because those are bonkers and crazy, and another outlier who kept going when things were tough in the British film industry. So I'm going to put down, I'm kind of rambling a bit because he might ask me about people in a moment, because I've not looked to the next bit of the thing, but I'm going to put 5 choices I want to see covered. I'm going to put Satan's Slave. Okay, and I'm going to write one of my other favorites, Theatre of, I never know whether to capitalize or, even though I'm a teacher, I never know. Theatre of Blood. If you're looking for the 70s, we can't do Inseminoid because it's 81, but for Norman Warren, you've got Prey, Satan's Slave to talk about there. Terror from 78 as well. Great films, but Satan's Slave is the best out of those. Satan's Slave, Theatre of Blood, Vincent Price, British campness, really creative kills, funny as hell, really well made, and people like it too. It's got really good rating on IMDb. Oh, man, it's great. Okay, so those are my things. Now, obviously, you're saying Alien, Wicker Man, okay, Suspiria, but I'm talking about ones that I'm going to skew into things that I don't think have been thought about or might not be dug into a lot. So, for example, I love The Exorcist, don't get me wrong. Black Christmas, I'm tempted to put Black Christmas in there, because even though I don't think there's enough chatter about how influential it is on the slasher genre, so I'm talking Black Christmas might go in there. Let's go through my list. I've got my Letterboxd up. You can get to that in my link tree if you want to see what I'm watching. So, I'm going to go through, I've ordered it from my 5 out of 5 films. So I've got 5 out of 5 films. I've got Black Christmas, Wicker Man, Suspiria, The Exorcist, Theatre of Blood, Jaws, Satan's Slave. Now, one that just creeps into the 70s, Hatchet for the Honeymoon. There's so much in that, like gender, creative kills, creative storylines, amazing. Wicker Man, 73, great film, 5 out of 5. For some reason, I've only given it 4 here. What's going on? So, again, Shivers, 4. I gave that 4 stars. Love that. 75. It has been mentioned earlier. I'm going to try and choose ones that haven't been mentioned. Phantasm, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. One that hasn't been mentioned, because I want Amicus to get a shout out here, because we're going to be probably talking Hammer, but there's a lot of people don't know the difference or don't see the difference, and sometimes an anthology film really does hit the spot. Phantasm, again, one of my favorites. The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue. I'd love to see really dive into that, actually. That might come on there. Tales from the Crypt, Horror Express, 7 Golden Vampires, and AD 72, which I always call AD 73 for some reason. Taste the Blood of Dracula's fine. It's a good film. Blood on Satan's Claw, Alucarda, which strangely Al Lucard told me about, from 77 is an interesting one. The Night Stalker. No one's really talking about it. Night Stalker. It's definitely more loved in America. The Night Stalker from 1972. Twins of Evil, Torso, Countess Dracula, The Sentinel. We talked about that earlier on. Shock, The Hills Have Eyes will definitely get a call. Deathline, that's a bonkers film. Deathline, Amityville Horror. Yeah, it is great, isn't it, Dan? Living Dead in Manchester Morgue, and it's nice because you've got a lot of the visual things that don't get seen in horror films very much. So you see a lot of the countryside. Recently, have actually in 28, whatever it is, lately 28 months, days, weeks, years, hours, whichever one it is. The latest one is in the Lake District, and this a bit of Living Dead in Manchester Morgue is in the Lake District as well, and the northwest of England too. So that's a good one. It's a good one to include. I might put that down as one that I think they should. There's a Bay of Blood. There's a Bay of Blood up there. Dr. Phibes we talked about. I think I might be a bit sneaky here, even though it's not one of my favorites. Yeah, Deathline is weird as well. It's creepy as hell. And yeah, do you know what I've got, Mr. I've got the lobby cards for Deathline somewhere. Not the only lobby cards I've ever displayed because I have the full set of them is Star Crash, but I've got those somewhere as well. Deathline ones. Wow, yeah, weird film. Living Dead at Manchester Morgue. I'm going to put in as my third choice actually. Oh, fourth choice. Oh my word, I'm running out. Is it The Living Dead or Living Dead at Manchester Morgue? The Living Dead. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dan. Manchester Morgue. Love it. Manchester Morgue. Morgue. Okay. Now, I'm going to be really sneaky with my next one because it's not, like I said, it's not one of my favorite films. It's a great film that I enjoy a lot, but I enjoy the filmmaker more than I enjoy, or like as a whole, rather than just like it's not a 5 out of 5 film, but I want to hear people talk about this. So I'm not going to do Grizzly, don't worry, because it's been mentioned for one thing, but I'm going to choose a Pete Walker film because then I've got Norman Warren and Pete Walker. So I'm going to put House of Whipcord. Now, those are my selections. This is what I came up with. Let me do a little screen grab of this so I can remember. I'll put this on social media later on, and people are like, "Why didn't you choose Alien, you dick?" And I'll be like, "Well, because I know people are going to talk about Alien." So, yeah. Okay. Those are my choices. Satan's Slave, Theatre of Blood, Asylum, The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, and House of Whipcord. Have that. Number 3. Section 3. What's this all about? And bear in mind, I've not clicked on this before because I'm doing this for the first time. But yeah, Mr. Dan's right. Donald Pleasance. Donald Pleasance has a punch up in a bar in that film, if I can remember correctly. So yeah, weird. Yeah. Okay, normal merch spread. Please note this is a mock-up. Okay. Yeah, because it's just looking like the last one, but rigid slipcase. Yeah. Cool. Premium packaging, of course. Patches. 80-page book, premium packaging. Right. I think with posters as add-on. So we've got option 1, the usual setup, 2 posters, sewn patch, and certificate. But this one swaps out posters, patch, and booklet for a book. Oh, do you know what? I'm more likely to get the one with a book and probably never read. No, just flick through it. So I'm going to go for option 2 because I just think it's a bit different. I think the book, the £80, might be £80, 80-page companion book. Film checklist is a nice idea. Certificate. No, I always like a bit of a certificate. I'm going to go for those 2. What I'd like to see in the 80-page film essays, behind the scenes insights, rare images, timelines. I would like to see timelines, rare images, and behind the scenes stuff. I might not buy the poster just because I've got no room for posters at the moment. No offense. Digital edition. New option: fans who want something collectible. Digital download delivered via email with a small physical collector package, like a certificate and a mini companion booklet. Oh, that's nice. That's a nice idea. You can get the digital package, but you get something physical. I wonder if I put it on a little man, people are not going to use these now, but like a little memory card or something. I think that's really interesting to have a digital edition that you get something. What do you guys think? You get like a thing. You get a thing, man. Get stuff. So what makes it worth it? Booklet, main one. Certificate. No, I'm going for that one. Would you like to join in the waitlist? I would, but I'm not going to put my personal email onto the thing. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hello. Here I am. It's full screen. It's like a 70s horror. His face. Ugh. So I'm going to send my email through, and then it says, thank you for completing this form. I have. I completed it. Finally. So I went for it. Now, what do you think about my selections? Because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people who think differently, and I'd love to hear it. Are there ones that I've missed, that I've not talked about, or not kind of given enough gravitas to? Big films that maybe haven't had documentaries about them before that I've completely missed. I feel like I've covered most of my rated films. The Pajama Girl case would be a good one. And that, my friend, is the end of the stream. Goodbye, everybody.